Morning, Council. We are live.
We'll call the meeting to order. And if you could please take a roll call, Dawn.
Deputy Mayor Dayu,
Present.
Councillor Barry,
Present.
Councillor Shortreed,
Present.
and Councillor Richards.
Councillor Richards will be with us shortly. She's been just briefly delayed. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today? Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconder by Deputy Mayor Dayu.
By Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, the March 16th, 2023 agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to declare a direct pecuniary interest on item 16G due to the proximity of the proposed project to my property.
Thank you. I have no particular remarks today other than to let the public know that we're holding our meeting electronically today because several of us have colds and it just seemed the safest way to proceed. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of March the 2nd, please? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the March 2nd, 2023 regular meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no public meetings today, but we do have two delegations. And first up, we have Steve Stone, the Director of Planning with the County of Haliburton, to talk to us or give us an update on the Shoreline Preservation Bylaw. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Your Worship, members of council. Thank you for allowing me to present to you the amended shoreline bylaw. So this bylaw, for those who are new to council, has its genesis as far back as 2019 with previous county council, and it builds on the existing tree preservation bylaw 3505. And what the new shoreline bylaw does is actually add a component of site alteration, which is basically the alteration of the shoreline within 20 meters of the high water mark of our lakes and rivers. So next slide, please. So as I said, the county council amended the bylaw again in February of on the 22nd. It still has an effective date of April 1st, 2023. And as I said, the legislation that allows for the site alteration is Section 142 of the Municipal Act. And now with this new amended bylaw, we have the benefits of preserving the shoreline trees as well as the topography of the shorelines. When you look at the bylaw itself, it's like most bylaws where you have Section 1 that deals with definitions. And the two critical ones that I'll point out to council will be that of the shoreline and also the prohibited area. So in regards to the shoreline, County Council has seen fit to protect the first 20 meters, as I mentioned. And they've also included prohibited areas. And most notably, which is a difference from the tree preservation bylaws, they've added wetlands now. And basically, the definitions are there to assist property owners with compliance as they look at maintaining their shorelines. Next slide, please. Section 3 is the area of application. As I mentioned, it applies to the first 20 meters of the high watermark of the shorelines, and now includes prohibited lands and wetlands. So prohibited lands is basically municipally owned lands. So if your municipality has ownership of shore road allowances, that would be considered prohibited lands. It doesn't apply to woodland areas, as that is covered by an existing forestry bylaw that the county administers. Next slide, please. Section 4 deals with prohibitions. There's 3 of them. So no site alteration, which is blasting, filling, and grading, is allowed without a shoreline permit. No removal of natural vegetation is allowed without a shoreline permit. And you're not allowed to remove stumps, as they serve a purpose to control soil erosion. Next slide, please. The most critical section is section 5, which deals with exemptions. And again, County Council was really keen on ensuring that there was flexibility to this bylaw to allow for sort of routine activities that property owners do with their shorelines. So you're allowed to continue with minor landscaping. A big one that occurs a lot is maintenance and replacement of existing features, such as retaining walls. Removal of 25% of your natural vegetation. That's a carryover from the existing tree preservation bylaw, but it now includes vegetation as a whole, as opposed to just trees. You're allowed to continue to prune and remove hazard trees. And the big one for a lot of cottage owners is activities associated with building permit. Most existing cottages will either be at the 20-meter mark, or they might be within that 20-meter mark. If you can obtain a building permit for, say, an addition to your cottage or a deck expansion, and you can get a building permit for that, then you're exempt from the shoreline permit system. And also, finally, one thing that's very important to cottagers is being able to access the waterfront. And you're still allowed to create an access or build an access that is up to 5 meters wide. Next slide, please. Section 6 provides the authority for shoreline permits to be approved. And again, County Council was really interested in ensuring that the process was easy to follow. It's administered by the County Planning Department. And like all planning applications, we encourage pre-consultation. County Council wanted to ensure that the fees were not too difficult with the start of the permit system. So fees to get a shoreline permit start at $100. If by chance you undertake works and it's determined you needed a permit, there is a bit of a penalty, and that's why you see the $500 fee. The system allows for a 30-day review period. Now, our best practices, we're hoping to do that in 10 business days. So that would allow us to have consultation and actually visit the site, talk to the property owner within 2 weeks of them submitting their application. Shoreline permits are valid for 3 years. And let's say we're not able to process the application within 30 days, or we don't issue a permit for various reasons, you can appeal that non-decision to County Council. Next slide, please. Section 10 deals with offenses and penalties. And again, one of the things that County Council wants to stress with this is that it's really, the approach is for compliance monitoring rather than enforcement. like most bylaws, it'll be complaint driven. We will be designating officers to help with compliance monitoring enforcement. One of the most critical things that we'll use is compliance requests. So I mentioned about doing work without a permit. Compliance request really is a letter to encourage people to apply for permits for works that they didn't get permits for. There's also, in the more serious cases, the opportunities to issue orders to rehabilitate shorelines. And in the real severe cases, we can go to provincial offenses court through Part 3 summons and ask for a judge to levy fines if they are found guilty. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of changes, so most recently, County Council looked at funding options for the new shoreline bylaw. And this would be in the case of the 3 participating townships. So the first 7 months or balance of this year, the program will be funded through county reserves. Starting in 2024, the program will be funded proportionately by the participating townships, and the fee is proportionate on the number of shoreline lots within each of the municipality. Next slide, please. Now, in this regard, the middle part of the slide shows that Algonquin Highlands has almost 4,200 shoreline lots, which represents about 21% of the lots within the county along the shoreline. And that our Director of Finance attributes about $45,000 would be required in 2024 to fund bylaw enforcement in your municipality. So next slide. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
So what we're hearing today is that we need support for council to continue to delegate, or once again delegate authority to the county, given that there are only 3 participants as opposed to 4. And it's my understanding that the program will be managed entirely by the county, although it will be funded a little bit differently than originally anticipated. I did want to ask Steve if when you say prohibited lands, including municipal lands, that means exempt from the bylaw, correct?
No, it's not an exemption. What it means is that we are not in a position to issue a building permit, or sorry, a shoreline permit for any works within municipally controlled lands. So it's sort of, that's a common practice in other areas of the province. We certainly, when I was at Seguin, if we had shoreline work activity and even building permit activity, we encourage the property owner to go through and purchase those lands. So
just a note before I take questions, to advise council that Highlands East did recommend approval of continuing with the process in adopting the bylaw as advised, or as revised. Deputy Mayor Dayu, and then
Thanks.
Councillor Barry.
Thanks. Steve, at the last county council, we touched very briefly on the possibility of turning subsequent years into a fee-based system to recoup some of those, some of that money. Is that something that you're going to be exploring, or where does that sit?
Well, one of the things that county council was very encouraging to staff to do was to monitor the success of the program. So we're going to use the balance of this year to see how active we are in terms of issuing permits and also doing enforcement activities. And that will lead to us to reassess whether or not, our fee structure needs to be enhanced to cover those activities. So I would expect that, before this time next year, we'll have a report to county council just to show how we've been doing and ask them if they want us to make some adjustments in regards to the fees.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Barry. You're on mute. We can't hear you. Might have to
Is that
turn up.
okay?
There you go. Oh, now you're on mute again.
Will there be an opportunity for Dysart to join the program? It seems to me that they're 37% of the shoreline, but not participating. Is that correct?
Thank you, Your Worship, to the rest of council. Yes, that is correct. They have opted at this point or resolved not to participate, not to delegate their authority to implement the new shoreline bylaws. So certainly, as the year goes on, and if they think that we're doing a great job elsewhere in the county, they can approach county council and ask for them to be included in this program as well.
Okay, and then a follow-up to that, if will they be doing any sort of shoreline, given that some of our lakes are connected? Like you could have one neighbor in Algonquin Highlands and one neighbor in Dysart that have different rules. Will they be doing any sort of preservation?
Thank you, Your Worship, to rest of council. So that's one of the things that we'll be presenting to county council next week. It's just an update to how the new bylaw will be enforced. We actually had a solicitor provide us an opinion, but it's safe to say this bylaw repeals the old bylaw, so 3505, in the 3 participating municipalities. And it's the solicitor's opinion that the existing tree preservation bylaw actually continues to apply in Dysart. So there will be some measure of shoreline protection there.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that, Councillor Barry, Dysart has suggested that they want to run their own program. There will be, so that suggests that there will be some similar type of work being done in Dysart at all. However, as you're suggesting, the problem there is that there will be a different set of rules at opposite ends of some lakes, which is really confusing for the public and unfortunate. Further questions? So I'm not actually, I'm sorry, but I'm not quite sure what you've got for a resolution, Don, but I would like us to be suggesting in the resolution that we're supportive of bringing the bylaw back and adopting it at our next meeting, because I see it's not included in this agenda.
Yes, the motion as drafted is to prepare the draft bylaw for the delegation for the April 6th council meeting.
Okay, are there any further questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then for the resolution? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives an update from Steve Stone, Director of Planning, County of Haliburton, regarding the shoreline preservation bylaw, and that council directs staff to draft a bylaw for its April 6, 2023 meeting, delegating its authority to implement and enforce shoreline preservation to the County of Haliburton as per Section 142 of the Municipal Act.
I wonder, before we take a vote on that, whether we should be adding that we support the bylaw. I'm thinking that we need something in place to allow the county to move forward, because I know that they want to start hiring, and I'm not sure how you will handle that if you don't actually have our bylaw in place, Steve.
Through you, Your Worship, to the rest of council. So at this point, I would say that we do have county council support to look at hiring. And so we'll initiate that process. It'll take some time for us to actually hire a bylaw officer for this program. In the meantime, we're hoping to approve appointments at this county council meeting coming up. And that would include myself, Adam, the senior planner here, as well as our existing forester, So we'll have some coverage going forward, but in terms of hiring a dedicated person, that'll take some time.
Okay. So I'll ask for all in favor on the resolution and as it stands. That's carried. Thank you, Steve. I think you can your support to move forward with this, and we appreciate your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Corey McKay, the county's climate change coordinator, to bring us up to date on her progress with climate action. Morning, Corey.
Good morning, Mayor Danielson and members of council. So today I'll be speaking to a countywide climate action progress report that was brought to County Council in January and is now being presented to each local municipal council for information. So as you may know, the county and its 4 local municipalities are working on a 3-phased climate change planning process. And so this report highlights some of the progress that's been made. The first phase is corporate climate change mitigation. So each council approved a plan in the fall of 2020. And these plans are designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from our municipal operations. Some achievements include the installation of electric vehicle charging stations in each community, food cycler pilot programs, which are now being expanded on a countywide basis, as well as green fleet policies and initiatives. The report also measures our corporate greenhouse gas emissions for 2021. Emissions in the township of Algonquin Highlands were down for municipal buildings and fleet and up slightly for landfills. However, 2021 data doesn't necessarily represent long-term trends since it was a year that was significantly impacted by the pandemic and lockdowns. The second phase is corporate climate change adaptation. Plans were approved by each council in 2022. So these plans look at adapting to more extreme and variable weather in our municipal operations. So some highlights there include ongoing work on the floodplain mapping project, as well as communication efforts on water levels and invasive species. Lastly is the development of our community-wide plan, which will come forward to each council this spring. We've completed lots of community engagement, ranging from forming a community climate action plan advisory group last year that was made up of members of each council as well as members of the community. We performed 2 community-wide engagements as well as met with local organizations that are already working on climate action in some form. So that's a brief update, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? I've got a couple of one question and a couple of comments to make. Corey, will the committee that was in existence continue to meet?
So the committee was formed temporarily for 4 meetings to provide feedback into the plan. But at the end of our meetings, we discussed, would this be worthwhile continuing for implementation of the plan? So this might be brought forward to County Council alongside looking for approval of a plan to sort of reform the same group or a similar group for implementation.
Because I can see how there would be maybe ongoing ideas and suggestions about things that could be done and updates that could be given. So that sounds great. I just wanted to comment that we do have our energy management plans in place. And as time goes by, we're gradually making changes. And I believe that we're making some good progress in that regard. So I would look to council. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Dayu and then Councillor Barry.
Thanks. Less a question and more a general remark that I am hopeful that in the follow-up to our impressive and successful LIDAR project, that we might start to consider a natural capital accounting or natural asset accounting, because we are so richly imbued with wetland structures and carbon sinks, and it would be a natural follow-on to that project to understand what sort of value that offers our community in terms of mitigating and adapting to climate change. So, and just another plug for that possibility moving ahead. But it's a great report, Corey. Thank you so much.
Any response to that, Corey?
Yeah, so a fabulous idea, and that is something that's come up through our community consultation, and so that may be a draft recommended action in the community-wide plan to continue on with that sort of work.
It's interesting to note that the federal government has now got advertisements out on TV stressing the importance of our wetlands, and that's really heartening to see that. Councillor Barry.
Yes, just in regards to the goals that, you know, improving energy efficiency, reducing fuel consumption, diverting organic waste, you know, these are big sort of summary statements. And I just wonder, from the working group, were there specific initiatives that came out of there that will be more, I don't know, explanatory? I'm thinking specifically for the Environment Committee that we're coming up with. Just some ideas on some of that roundtable discussion, if that will be shared, or I don't know if that explains my question, but I'm just looking for more examples specifically.
Of tangible actions underneath each of those goals. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, so the ones in this report are for our corporate plans. So each goal has more specific strategies and actions underneath those goals. And then there's sort of key performance indicators that we can report on for those. And the community plan will be similar, where there's high-level strategies, but then there's more specific actions and tactics underneath each of those goals that we can then report progress on.
And that's something that our Environment Committee can delve into.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to accept Corey's report or receive? Councillor Barry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives a delegation from Corey McKay, Climate Change Coordinator, regarding the Climate Action Progress Report.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you so much, Corey.
Thank you.
And just take a second to welcome Councillor Richards. Next on the agenda is the Building and Bylaw Enforcement Report. Good morning, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. This morning, I'm pleased to present the monthly activities report for the month of February. The highlights basically are we have one new house, a new home build, and we have construction value of about $900,000 with permit fees in excess of $4,000.
Looks like we're getting off to a little bit slower start this year than we did last year.
Yeah.
Any questions for Greg? We're getting off easy today, Greg. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the Building and Bylaw report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that Council receives report BLDG 723 submitted by Greg Moore, dated March 16th, 2023, regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next is Parks, Recreation and Trails. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
I see you have a number of items on the agenda. The first is a bylaw to appoint Dylan Reynolds.
That's correct. Yes. So Dylan in the fall was hired as our trails coordinator. And this would be a bylaw to allow him to enforce bylaws associated with the Haliburton Highlands Water Trails program.
Okay, so we'll deal with that under the bylaw section. Next is a truck purchase.
Yes, so last spring, we had budgeted to purchase a long box pickup truck, which would be a replacement for existing pickup truck within the PRT department, used mainly by the Trails Division. We have yet to receive delivery of that truck, and we have not been able to get any answer as to when that truck would be delivered. And in fact, it's not even on the list yet to be constructed. We have learned through discussions with the dealer that that model of truck and that variation on a truck is becoming increasingly rare. Combined with that, there's still an existing backup following COVID on production of vehicles, and dealerships continue to have low stock. So we're heading towards the summer months when the truck's in most demand, and I do need one starting in May. So we reached out to the dealer to see if there was anything that they could offer us that would be a more expedient option. At the same time, asking the question, what's the likelihood of us getting this long box truck in the next 6 months? They couldn't give us an answer on the long box truck in the next 6 months, but they could let us know that they could give us the same specified truck as one that Public Works had just accepted for the same cost. And they've actually held that for us pending this discussion and decision. However, it is an increased cost over what we had budgeted. We have a reserve funded transfer this year planned for the long box not received of $45,500. And the truck they've proposed is $61,268, which is a difference of just over $15,000, which I'm recommending that we proceed with, given the uncertainty of the delivery time and the timelines for our needs. And the reserve amounts in the water trails at the end of this year are currently planned to be at $78,900. And this $15,760 additional for this truck would be off of that.
And do you think that the short box will work for you?
It will, yes. Yeah.
Sounds like a bit of hesitation there. But on the other hand,
It's nice. I'm sorry. It's nice. It's nice to have a long box for particular projects. It's not that a short box doesn't work out. It's just a little more convenient in certain circumstances. But what the short box offers us is more convenience for moving more personnel. So it gives us some capacity if we're ever adding personnel in the future.
Deputy Mayor Dayu?
For Chris and Angie, is it feasible to keep the long box, to go ahead with this purchase and then keep the long box on order? And when the other vehicle arrives, see if we can shift around the use of those vehicles so you ultimately do get your long box? Or is that not good for us?
If
If I may, through you, Mayor, we aren't like our fleet is full at the moment once we have this truck, and we don't have any replacements in the near future based on the asset management plan for the lifespan of trucks. You would, I just off the top of my head, I think the most likely scenario is you'd be into the case of actually selling the truck you had just purchased having the loss of the cost once you drive the vehicle off the lot of the value of it.
Not to mention that we haven't budgeted for another truck. Madam CAO.
It may not be a bad idea to have that conversation with the Public Works manager, because depending on, and thank you for suggesting that, because depending on where we're at in our fleet replacement there, there may be a possibility of Public Works actually purchasing from PRT department. So if we may be allowed to leave that with us, and we can have that conversation and perhaps bring it back if needed.
Well, definitely the conversation would be worthwhile, particularly when we're seeing the length of the delays that we're running up against. Any other questions about this acquisition? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve going ahead with the purchase? Councillor Short, Reid and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short Reid, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives report PRT 323 regarding PRT truck purchase submitted by Chris Card dated March 16th, 2023, and Council directs staff to proceed with the purchase of the truck as outlined in the report for the cost of $61,268 plus applicable tax from Curvy Chevrolet Buick GMC Limited.
All in favor? That's carried. Finally, is your monthly activity report.
Yes, thank you. So it's hiring season at the moment. So we're going through our onboarding processes for a number of seasonal staff. We have closed some of those seasonal position postings and are now going through the interview process, but some of them are still open and available, and some more will be forthcoming. So there are continuing to be opportunities posted that we'll be recruiting for throughout the spring. Overall, following an extended closure of the ski trails at the start of the season due to poor weather, we're seeing an increase in revenues on the ski trails, which is great to see. And we had a fantastic family day-long weekend with an increase in revenues there over last year. Of course, last year still being some kind of play out following the pandemic. So we're going to start to see numbers get more close to, I would predict, what we had seen pre-pandemic. This is what's being reflected in the overall year-to-date revenue for the water trails, which we're seeing a decrease. However, we saw a significant unprecedented increase in attendance after campsites opened up following the pandemic, which in some ways wouldn't have been sustainable long-term. So these numbers for water trails revenue are the kind of long awaited to see what would happen following COVID, and it's now coming back down more in line to what it was pre-COVID. So we'll see how that trend follows the year. I have highlighted some snowball information as well with attendance numbers and revenue numbers. So very happy to report that the snowball, despite not having an indoor space like is normal and folks are used to, it didn't seem to affect attendance at all. And in fact, a fantastic event was run. We had a significant amount of buttons sold and a lot of people there to have a lot of fun and a lot of great feedback. And I'd just like to congratulate all of the staff and all of the volunteers. A big thank you to them as well on such a great event. I'd like to highlight that also in the revenues that we were right on target for our anticipated revenues for the snowball. And it's amazing how much the community supports this event. Almost half of the total revenues is through donations. So those are from businesses, individuals. Council may recall that this year we updated our sponsorship program and our sponsorship outreach for the snowball. And in that, we received a lot of great feedback. And in some instances, people were signing on for more than they had in the past. Just with how that was structured. So we're definitely planning on continuing with that, but at the same time, just like to highlight a very big thank you to everyone donating time, money, in-kind donations for things like the silent auction, and it was a wonderful event.
Thanks. You've taken the words right out of my mouth, Chris. Any questions for Chris on his report? I have a couple of questions. I'm wondering if you've heard back from any of the residents about the Heron Landing Road and the use of the staging area?
I did receive some hearsay information that there was some concerns over parking around the road outside of the parking area, and then also some parking inside of the pit. The parking in the pit I actually heard about directly from the association and received some photos on that. I haven't received any formal complaints or information from any residents myself following the correspondence that was given. We did in follow up to the issues around parking in the pit, add some signage there. So it's being very well used, which has been great to see. And it got used immediately after we put it in place. And even yesterday, actually, I was surprised to see some vehicles parked there. But any correspondence relative to what we sent out for notice, I've not received back.
I'm also wondering, where you've landed, or if you've had any thoughts or further thoughts about the exercise equipment for the rec center.
Yeah, so there's a couple of possibilities right now that we're exploring. The recreation coordinator and myself was able to have a meeting with the Dorset Lions camp and look at some space that's available there. And another option we're considering is some rental options for portables that may be able to fit our needs. Right now, we're just going through the quotation process for what those would be. And then once I have those numbers, I'd like to bring a report back to council with those two options and considerations.
Excellent. Be nice to see some added opportunities for use of the equipment. Any other questions for Chris? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive his report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barrett.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives report PRT 423 regarding monthly activities submitted by Chris Card and dated March 16th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir. Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work.
Thanks.
Next up is environmental business.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning, Melissa. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, you've got lots of reporting to do today.
It is, as I've said a couple of times, it is reporting season. So this is part of the start of that process. So,
so first up is your activity report.
thank you. Just a couple of points that I'll note here, and then any questions you have. The single tier waste management county RFP has concluded and been evaluated, and we do expect the report on that to be coming to County Council, I believe, at the March 22nd meeting. I haven't seen the report yet, but that's sort of on the agenda there. Dates for the household hazardous waste events have changed slightly from my initial report. Unfortunately, there were some scheduling conflicts amongst us. So new dates, we're looking at June 10th at the Maple Lake landfill site, August 5th for the Oxtongue Lake site, September 23rd for Dorset, and then back to Maple Lake on October 14th. And from previous years, we just have adjusted the time of events to coincide with the new sorry, I just lost operating hours for those sites. So 10 to 2 for most events, except for the one at the Dorset transfer station on September 23rd, which would be 1 to 5. And that's in keeping with previous events there.
Any questions on the activity report? Hearing none, could I have a mover? Oh, sorry, Councillor Berry.
I had an inquiry from a taxpayer in regards to the new, this isn't really in your report, but it's relative, in regards to the new landfill cards and the new hours. They wanted to know why the website wasn't updated, and I just assumed that it would be updated when the hours actually come into effect. Is that correct?
I do believe that the site hours have been updated, but I'm just double checking on that right at this moment. So
This email came to me late last, or not last week, but the week before, since our last council meeting. So it could have been prior to any changes.
yeah, I will certainly double check and make sure that those are corrected.
Okay.
I know they have been, the Waste Wizard does have them corrected there, and as well the site attendants do have new handouts with the hours. The signage at the sites has not been updated yet, so that's
okay, maybe that's what they were talking about.
still in the works. So I will certainly give a second round on checking on all of those, because they should certainly be up to date now.
Councillor Richards.
I'm just wondering if there's if you have any idea when we'll be getting options for the Hawk Lake transfer station in restoring services.
I suspect that during the summer we will start that process and to engage our consultant to be looking at some things there. So report back to council probably in the fall.
Any other questions on the activity report? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report EB 723 regarding monthly activities submitted by Melissa Murray dated March 16th, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is one of a number of annual monitoring reports. First for Maple Lake.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll just sort of give an overall review, sort of, because there are some similarities, obviously, in all of our monitoring reports. And just to let council know, we're in a really good position. There aren't any significant impacts of any of our sites, which is great. And it's always worthwhile noting, of course, these are landfill and waste disposal sites, so there always are impacts. But the thing that we monitor for is that they're within regulations and within in guidelines and within reasonable use. So we do meet all of those requirements. So Maple Lake, obviously, we've seen some increased usage at that site, but no significant impacts noted from those increased uses, and we continue to monitor there. And I'll just address any questions that anyone might have.
Councillor Berry.
You kind of just spoke to that, but in regards to the 46-year lifespan at Maple, how has that changed in regards to the Hawks using that facility? And I guess that speaks possibly to Pine Springs as well. How do you come up with the lifespan when there's now more use happening with the other landfill being closed?
Thank you. If I may.
Mm-hmm.
We won't start to see the changes in those probably for another year, because our we don't have, other than surveying, we don't have, like, we don't have quantitative measures other than our bag counts and that sort of thing. So they tend to be a little bit delayed in the amount of time that we'll start to see those changes come through. So, and not only that, but our year-to-year impacts are fairly small. It's over the longer time that we'll start to see that number will start to change and start to come into line with the closure of the hawk there.
So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the Maple Lake monitoring report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, the council receives report EB 823 regarding 2022 annual monitoring report Maple Lake Waste Disposal Site, submitted by Melissa Murray, dated March 16th, 2023, and the council authorized KBM Inc. to submit the 2022 annual monitoring report Maple Lake Waste Disposal Site to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the Pine Springs report. Anything specific there, Melissa?
Thank you, Mayor. Pine Springs, the one thing, we did install some new sampling locations last year, and though this was our first year of sampling from there, so those measurements will be used as a basis for looking at trends as we move forward. So they are doing what we hope they would do, and to give us some new data as far as looking at the impacts of the site there.
Any questions about Pine Springs? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the Pine Springs report? Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report EB 923 regarding the 22 annual monitoring report Pine Springs Waste Disposal Site, submitted by Melissa Murray, dated March 16th, 2023, and that council authorized KBM Inc. to submit the 2022 annual monitoring report Pine Springs Waste Disposal Site to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the monitoring report for the Dorset Transfer Station.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Dorset Transfer Station, this is a biennial report now, so just every 2 years. So this is our report for 2021 and 2022. So some of the you'll see some of the quantities of waste and that sort of thing are obviously doubled because this is a two-year report. The site there hasn't been accepting waste since 2015, so we're now starting to see sort of that the site is impacts have leveled out. So we will be looking at requesting the ministry to actually cease environmental monitoring for that site. So that will be the regular annual or biannual annual sampling and then biannual reporting on those. And that's because we aren't seeing any impacts of the waste at that site. So it's a great opportunity to start scaling that down. We're not seeing any impacts on the Hollow River and the tributaries, and nothing in groundwater other than the regular expected impacts from waste being deposited at that site. So that's sort of something that it'll probably be a couple of years before we'll have assessments that'll need to go through groundwater and surface water and technical reviews, and then as well approval by the district manager. So nothing quickly on that, but that our consultant has recommended that we move forward with that process.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the Dorset Transfer Station report? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council received report B 1023 regarding the 2021-2022 monitoring report, Dorset Transfer Station Waste Disposal Site, submitted by Melissa Murray, dated March 16th, 2023. And the council authorized Cambium Inc. to submit the 2021-2022 monitoring report, Dorset Transfer Station Waste Disposal Site, to MECP on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the monitoring report for Oxtongue Lake.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing notable at Oxtongue. It is a fairly low usage site, and we are, it's nice to see we're not seeing any impacts from that site on the Oxtongue River and in groundwater there. So good news all around at that site.
Any questions on that report? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillors Richards and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives report EB 1123 regarding the 2022 annual monitoring report, Oxtongue Lake Waste Disposal Site, submitted by Melissa Murray, dated March 16th, 2023, and the council authorized Cambium Inc. to submit the 2022 annual monitoring report, Oxtongue Lake Waste Disposal Site, to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is the report for the McClintock Lagoon.
Thank you, Mayor. So McClintock Lagoon usage of the site is fairly low. We've just had one hauler using the site in 2022. We're less than half of our approved capacity for that site. So nothing of note there. We do have one note of just compliance at that site, and that is that we haven't been able to comply with the requirement for raw septage sampling, and that's from the hauler, although we have been doing raw sampling of the actual lagoon, and that is something we have it was brought forward last year, and we have made the application to the ministry to remove that requirement from our sampling. There are no there's nothing has been notable from any of that sampling, and it really isn't giving us any valuable data at all. And because of the location of the site and the timing of haulers in and out of that site, it is very challenging for staff to collect those samples. So that's just the sort of one note that is in that report.
Any questions on the lagoon? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives report EB 1223 regarding the 2022 annual performance report, McClintock Septage Lagoon, submitted by Melissa Murray, dated March 16th, 2023, and council authorizes Cambium Inc. to submit the 2022 annual performance report, McClintock Septage Lagoon, to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, your extension agreement for Waste Connections Canada.
This is just bringing forward the actual agreement. So this was a report to council previously to approve that extension. So it's just formal report.
Any questions about that? Could I have a mover and a seconder to move forward with the agreement? Councillors Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives the extension agreement with Waste Connections Canada regarding the bin haulage and processing blue box recycling program, and directs a bylaw be brought forward authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. One final question for you, Melissa. I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot, but I do know that there are a lot of people who are quite anxious about or very interested in the Hawk Lake transfer station and whether we can go ahead with that or not. I wonder if you could just expand a little bit on the timing that you outlined earlier, I can well imagine that there will be people who will be scrambling and wanting to know why it takes that long. So if you could just maybe speak to that a little bit.
As far as the timing of bringing a report back to council, is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
So there's a council has asked for a couple of different options there, and so we do need some time to evaluate them. Obviously, if council would like to look at something else, spring is a particularly busy time, and particularly this year with the developments for Maple Lake. So the hope is by summer, that there will be a bit more time to give some focus to that, and then like I say, bringing forward a report in the fall with the results of that investigation. So I would certainly look for direction from council there.
No specific direction, just that, that I know that there are a lot of people that was something that was a very, very big issue during the election. A lot of people were concerned about it, and I'm sure that the balanced with the other work that you've got, that the sooner that we can get that report or some information coming back to us on that, probably the better. But understanding that that you've got a big project underway, and that you've got a work schedule already. Thank you for your reports and all your information today.
If I may, I just had a last minute, it seems to be a trend, information provided to me, and that was just from Corey in regard to the food cycler project at the county, and we have had 500 registrants for that. So we will. Wow. I think registration continues until Friday, but it will be a lottery process to award those now.
Well, it's good to see the level of interest in that. That's great. Good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
I think it might be appropriate for us to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back with Public Works. Just a reminder to mute and turn your video off.
Council, we are live.
Thank you, and welcome back. Next on the agenda is Public Works. Good morning, Mr. Thorne.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So first up is your surface treatment tender.
Yeah, so this was a joint project with the County of Haliburton again on surface treatment. This has been a multi-year joint project that we work with them on. And once again, it's an awesome privilege to be able to do this with the county. I would like to say that this has been one of our closest years for almost being under budget or on budget, which is great considering what we've been dealing with over the past couple of years. So yes, as you can see here, we did receive 3 bids on the surface treatment. Miller Paving was the lowest bid and did come in just a little over budget by $1,568. So As per the report, staff would like to move forward with this project and approve the project to Miller Paving.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to move ahead with the surface treatment tender? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives report PW 623 regarding surface treatment tender results submitted by Adam Thorne dated March 16th, 2023. And Council hereby concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and accepts the tender bid from Miller Paving Limited in the amount of $335,912 plus applicable tax for the supply and application of double surface with fog seal, pulverization, and slurry seal. And that Council authorize the award of tender 23-9A for the supply and application of surface treatment pertaining to Algonquin Highlands. And further, that Council hereby authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the required agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is your public works activity, monthly activities. Maybe give us any highlights that you think are appropriate.
Yes, of course. So for this month, a couple items that I would like to highlight is the first meeting of the Green Burial Committee. That was a successful meeting. It was great to meet the new committee members and start working into some of the plans for this year. So that was really good to be able to attend that. And then we did kind of nail down that we would be doing a site layout plan for the spring. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Something that's not on here, but I did attend this week was a winter burial, not too far from here. So that was a good experience to go and see, because I have lots of experience with digging holes in the wintertime. So it was nice to see that my thought process aligned with a company that does it for graves. So that was a good experience. Into the equipment, I would like to say that the grader has come back. That is a report the council may recall a couple months ago that the machine was sent for repairs. That did come back to us and is now back working and was under budget. So that's a win for us as well. And in here, I guess the other item would be the snowball event. I know that the PRT manager, Chris Card, brought that up earlier, and it was a success. And just wanted to carry on that you know, it was a great opportunity for us to work alongside with the PRT again on this project. And from my staff's perspective, it was a success. So that's another great partnership within the township. So other than that, everything else is going really, really well. It's been a strange season with the lack of snow, but then extreme snow. So it's a lot of up and down, as I'm sure you've all seen. And yeah, so everything's going really, really well.
Any questions for Adam on his monthly activities? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that report? Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
By Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that Council receives report PW 723 submitted by Adam Thorne and dated March 16th, 2023 regarding monthly activities for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, an update on the Dorset Rec Center.
Yeah, so the RFP has been sent out and it will run for a couple more weeks. We've had just a couple questions on the site meeting. Other than that, everything so far is moving slow, or sorry, not slowly, is moving smoothly. It's going really well so far. So yeah, everything's good to go here, and we'll keep you updated as information comes along.
Any questions about the Dorset Rec Center? Okay, thanks. I think we look forward to the results of the RFP. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Have a great day.
You too. Next up is fire services.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
the chief is away today, so we'll just, if council doesn't, I can answer anything that I might be able to answer, but he's not here to answer those questions.
okay. Are there any questions on the chief's report? I did want to thank him for organizing my ability to ride in one of the fire department's vehicles in the parade. That was, it really was a great experience, and the department was really helpful to me. So I appreciated that. A lot of good work by a lot of people went into Dorset, and it's really appreciated. Could I then have a mover and a seconder to receive the fire chief's report? Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives report FD 423 regarding monthly activities submitted by Michael French and dated March 16th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, next up is finance. Good morning, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Your first report is the account summary.
Correct. Nothing out of the norm on that one.
Any questions on the account summary? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the account summary report TT 923 in the amount of $885,130.99 and hereby approves payment of same.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the rather confusing Regulation 284 on budget matters.
Yes, I would agree. It is a requirement of Regulation 28409 budget matters that we do this report every year after the budget is passed, particularly because we do not budget for amortization expenses, post-employment benefits, or solid waste landfill closure and post-closure expenses. So basically, you just have to restate what's there in order to get a more accurate or a different result if you were to include those expenses, which I've done the process. It results in a deficit for this year as well, but notably, it is reasonable to expect that as the township's asset inventory and associated amortization expenses and continue to grow, deficits may occur, as in 2023, as in last year too. It was lower last year as well. So it's just a standard report that's required in response to our budget, passing of the budget.
But it doesn't change our bottom line or the tax rates in any way.
Nothing at all.
Matter of reporting. Does council have any questions on that report? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive it? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council adopts Treasury Report TT 1023 regarding budget matters expenses submitted by Jean Hughes and dated March 16th, 2023, pursuant to the requirements of the Municipal Act 2001, Ontario Regulation 284/09.
All in favor? That's carried. Please tell me I'm not the only one that scratches their head when they look at that report.
I think we all do.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is general administration business. And the first item is a update and minutes from the Stanhope Museum Committee. I guess that would be over to you, Councillor Barry.
Yeah, it was a great meeting. I mean, I haven't been on the committee for a term, so it was nice to see such a full table of people there at the meeting. A lot of it was a bit of an update. You know, we have talked about the pros and cons of having the Heritage Day, and I think the committee has agreed to continue with Heritage Days opposed to a one event. So we're in the process of planning some events that will happen throughout the summer instead of one specific event. There was some talk of new exhibition or exhibits for the coming season, and just working at, you know, logistics in regards to seasonal hours and volunteer work. So overall, it was a great meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm just wondering if you could give us an idea of the type of events, special events that are being considered. Sure. Last year they did some that had to do with maple syrup, and they had I guess an artist or a local community member give demonstrations. There was another one on tying flies. So similar ones, but trying not to overlap with what has already been done. So nothing specifically has been nailed out. We're more looking at if that's something the committee wants to do. I'm assuming this will kind of come in the next couple weeks or next couple meetings. Okay, any questions for Councillor Barry? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the minutes? Councillor Short-Reed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council receives the February 23rd, 2023 Stanhope Museum Committee meeting minutes as information, and further Council acknowledges with regret the resignation of Sue Robertson from the committee.
All in favor? That's carried. Would there be a letter sent to Sue thanking her for her years of service?
Yes, we'll send one out.
Thank you. She's been a long-standing member and took minutes for years for us and did a great job. So it's good. Next on the agenda is a discussion about public attendance at council meetings. I see a number of councils are going back to allowing the public to attend, and it's something that I think that we need to move forward with, recognizing that we do have some space challenges with respect to that, but I'd like to hear council's thoughts. Deputy Mayor Dayu, then Councillor Short-Reed.
Yeah, I'm very much in favor. As I said the last time we spoke of this, I think, and I know this is shared, I think the community has the right to frown at us when they're not happy and to applaud us when they are happy with what we do. And if we can restore that in person, I think that puts us a little bit more in the hot seat, which is a good thing. I think that's the type of accountability that is appropriate. Staff comfort is paramount. So, you know, I guess my question is, you know, through to Angie, where are the staff on this, and how can we make sure those two needs find a happy compromise?
Go ahead, Angie.
I mean, obviously, you know, we will do whatever council directs, obviously. You know, it is a small space for bigger crowds. If there was a topic that you know required a lot of people in the room, that can become uncomfortable. So we would have to sort that part out. I'm not sure if we would have to move the meeting to the community center. Those are the logistics that we will need to talk about. One of the things that I guess that comes to mind is days like today. So if council is going to continue to allow situations like this where council Zooms in, if everyone is sick or a number of council members are sick, how do we then manage people, you know, if someone wanted to come in to sit in the council chamber and council's not in there? So if we're going to allow that, the public to come back in, that needs to be considered.
I can't see why we would, I mean, why would the public want to be in a room where we aren't? You know, I think it's going to be rare that we do meet like this. It's just that we're in the middle of the cold season, and in order for our meeting to go ahead, this seems the best alternative. There's ways of advising the public that we are going to be meeting electronically. I know that there isn't a lot of room for the public, and I think there's maybe enough room for another single row of chairs without interfering with our electronic equipment. I would think, you know, we'd need to consider options like, as you mentioned, maybe if it's a meeting where we know there's going to be a large attendance, moving it to the community center, and or, you know, holding it virtually to allow people to attend and speak to us. You know, if there's a large delegation, for instance, you know, we've had a number of public meetings where through the county where there's been a lot of people, you know, a great number of people attend and be able to speak to us online. So, you know, I think that I don't know if we would have to, do we have a policy in place that we need to amend? Or is this, we've just been dealing with this because of COVID?
Dawn can speak to that for us.
Provisions are contained within our procedural bylaw to allow electronic meetings at any time in consultation with the CAO and the mayor due to specific reasons.
Okay, Councillor Shortreed, you had your hand up.
I did. My question was answered, but I am in full support of going back to open council.
It would be my thinking that for the most part, you might have one or two, or, you know, even 4 people from the public would be, you know, probably more than we'd ever see. I'm just thinking back to the last time that we had our open budget discussions and we had 1 person in attendance. Councillor Barry.
Yeah, I support the public coming in person. I also think that given that we are online now through Zoom, I don't expect the turnout to be any more than it was before the digital, you know, modernization. I think that if anything, I would love to know if we had an idea of how much our, I would call it, viewership has increased since we've gone electronically, compared to, you know, 1 or 2 people coming to one meeting, you know, here and there.
I do suspect that that we wouldn't have any more people attending. I don't know if we do have those numbers or not. I suspect we could probably find them pretty easily. I also suspect that more people, because it's so easy to sit at home and watch us, that the likelihood of the public attending is when they have a particular interest, like the last meeting that we had when I had to ask people to leave. And you know, I really hated to have to do that, but until we had this discussion and came to an agreement, that's the way it was. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
To that point, when I've gone back onto YouTube to watch certain segments of our previous council meetings to repair holes in my memory, I've been shocked at how massive the viewership has been. You know, sometimes 70, sometimes I think there was one instance where there were almost 200 people who had at some point watched that video. So I think the viewership is high. I suspect a lot of people just go back and watch it when they're good and ready. They don't have to watch it live unless they're you know, presenting the delegation. That would be my feeling.
Any other comments? Deputy Mayor Dayu, then Councillor Richards.
I do have another question for Angie. I wonder what your thoughts are. If there are cases where we do anticipate a high viewership or a high turnout, and if there are any members of staff, or I suppose council, but I'm thinking mainly about staff who are uncomfortable with the crowds because of the COVID risk, what are your thoughts on maybe enabling them to Zoom in? And obviously, you know, I hope it goes without saying, we want to prioritize their comfort and their ability to be in the room. But where there is sort of a clash of those priorities, do you have thoughts on enabling a staff member to Zoom in from their office?
I certainly wouldn't want to, I mean, I have no problem with that at all, but I also want to be sensitive to singling that person out. And so that would be, if council's okay with that, it would be a conversation that I would have with that staff person. It also would depend on their role as well. So if that's okay, I would, you know, if we could leave that to a conversation if it ever comes up.
Well, and there may be times when staff have to Zoom in anyway, depending on what their
Absolutely.
schedules are and their workloads. So I'm hearing that we're generally in concurrence that we would like to allow the public back into the room. I would ask, are there any changes that need to be made to the procedural bylaw to go ahead?
No.
Okay. Do you have a resolution for us to agree to meet again in public?
Yes, I have a motion.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then for that? Councillors Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council authorize the opening of the council chambers to the public for attendance during meetings of council.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next up is planning business. Good morning, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Let's go through the easy ones first. So first up is your Committee of Adjustment meeting.
Yes, these are the minutes. So if there's any questions of council, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions on the Committee of Adjustment meeting? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive those? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council receives the February 24th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is Prince and the proposed closing of Shore Road allowance.
Yes, this is the bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property on Saskatchewan Lake. It was circulated to adjacent property owners as well as to the commenting agencies. No objections were submitted or easements requested. So staff would recommend approval of the proposed bylaw.
It's interesting to note that almost all development on the property is on the Shore Road allowance. So this is a good acquisition on their part. Any questions on this one? Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve it? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 1523 regarding the proposed Shore Road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 9, Concession 11, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Prince, Saskatchewan Lake. submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated March 16th, 2023, and the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the shore road allowance closing by for Ott and Barima on Boschkong.
Yes, this again is a bylaw to close the shore road allowance adjacent to this property. One thing to note is, as council will recall, the survey was amended to exclude the lands that were adjacent to the buck slides. So this proposal is just to close the shore road allowance that's fronting on Boschkong Lake. There's a small portion that is adjacent to the buck slides, but it doesn't go all the way to the water, and that's to accommodate existing development on the property. So it was circulated for comment to the commenting agencies as well as adjacent property owners, and no objections have been received. So staff are recommending approval of the proposed bylaw.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, Sean. I had forgotten about the rationale for the split in the two pieces. Councillor Barry, you have a question?
Did this file go to the land division?
No, I'm not aware of any application for consent being applied for on the property.
Okay, I'm confusing it with another one, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, there would be no need for this one to go to the land division.
Okay.
Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve this? Councillor Richards and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 1623 regarding proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of Lot 7, Concession 3, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Ott and Bierma, Boschkong Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated March 16th, 2023, and the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is shore road allowance closing for Raftus on Little Hawk.
Yes, this is another bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. No objections have been received from adjacent property owners or easements requested from the commenting agencies, so staff would recommend approval of the proposed bylaw.
Are there any questions on this application? Looks fairly straightforward. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve the request? Councillors Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 1723 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at parts of Lot 19 and 20, Concession 10, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Raftus, Little Hawk Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated March 16th, 2023, and the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is proposed road allowance closing for Lalonde and Burdette on Kawagama.
Yes, this is a bylaw to close the road allowance that runs between two properties which front on Kawagama Lake. It has been circulated to the commenting agencies and no objections or easements were requested. So staff are recommending approval of the proposed bylaw to close the road allowance.
John, I just wonder if you could explain the two-part portion of it.
Yes, so on the plan, part 2 is to be added to the lands directly north. And part 1 would be added to the lands south of the road allowance.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to recommend approval? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayou, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives report PL 1823 regarding proposed road allowance closing between properties located at part of lot 17, concession 1213, geographic township of Sherburne, the lawn and Burdett, Guagama Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated March 16th, 2023, and the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and directs the bylaw to stop up, close, and convey the said shore road allowance be brought forward for further consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is your report on the dark skies policy that we had requested.
Yes, so this report is to provide some options to council and seek direction on how council wishes staff to proceed with this topic. With the recently introduced Bill 23 through the province, site plan control abilities have been essentially eliminated for our township, which was a powerful tool for controlling exterior features of development, including lighting. So without that ability, we would be limited to creating a bylaw to control dark sky lighting. So the options for council to consider at this time are to develop a dark sky bylaw, and I've listed some thoughts I have on proceeding with that option. The second option would be to develop a public education program, which would highlight the importance of preserving the dark sky in our area. I am recommending that option based on the very limited number of complaints staff have received on dark sky infractions. It doesn't seem to be an issue that has come up significantly enough for us to proceed with a bylaw at this time. So that's why I would recommend proceeding with that public education portion to get a better idea of the concerns that are out there. And that would help inform the development of either a policy or a bylaw in the future.
Or a third option could be to do both. And that's depending on, our discussion today and what members of council think. Just a note for council that even if we had put a policy in place, because I think first you said we couldn't do a bylaw. I think you meant policy as opposed to bylaw, because you're saying we can in fact do a bylaw if we want to. But even if we had put a policy in place, Bill 23 would put a stop to that at this point in time. Anyway, I'm looking for comments, questions, concerns from members of council. Deputy Mayor Dayou.
Thanks. Sean, does Bill 23 preclude the municipality from establishing a policy for our own assets, our buildings, any docks and landings that have lights? Can we still do that?
So the implications of Bill 23 are strictly to do with site plan control, not with implementing a dark sky bylaw. So we could still implement a dark sky bylaw and it could apply to municipal lands. I think just from a enforcement side of things, it would be awkward for us to issue an infraction on property we own. So in best practice, it's certainly something we could follow. But typically with bylaws like that, municipal lands would be exempt.
Other thoughts or comments? Councillor Richards, then Councillor Barry.
I'm wondering about, like, if we don't have a policy or bylaw for dark sky, I don't see that we would have a lot of calls to complain about it. But it is certainly something that I hear discussed in the community. And there's a lot of support to keep our night skies. And so the community is wanting a dark sky bylaw. So I would be in support of just making a bylaw. I think there's a lot of education out there already. I think that, anybody who's not aware of dark sky sort of desires in the community, I'm not sure that we need to put a lot of investment into education about that, because I think it's out there. But a bylaw is certainly what I think we need.
Councillor Berry.
Is being able to enforce the bylaw, I tend to wonder if we can enforce fireworks and we can enforce some of the things that are in the clean and clear. I do feel that we possibly could enforce this bylaw. But before I support a bylaw, if we can't have a policy, I support moving this to the Environment Committee to maybe come up with some educational opportunities. I do think that there's people that are lighting up the sky unconsciously. Maybe they don't realize that it's just a simple changing the direction of a light and there would be less impact on your neighborhood. So I do think public education would be where I'd like to see us start, and then maybe come back and consider a bylaw after the public education component is done.
I agree that it's, I mean, that is something that the Environment Committee can do. Because, I mean, as you noted, Councillor Richards, a lot of people do know about it, but a lot are just, they're oblivious to, they just want to light up their own yards. They're using it for their own use, and they're not thinking about the impact that there is on the surrounding area, on the lake as a whole. So, I mean, it's not like we're asking staff to develop an educational program. If the Environment Committee wants to go ahead with that work, I think that would be a good idea. Personally, I'd like to see us develop or do both, develop a bylaw and do an education policy. Particularly if we're going to do a bylaw, I think we need to do the education as well, and prepare people for the fact that there's a bylaw coming into place. Deputy Mayor Dayu.
I support Councillor Berry's two-step suggestion, and I support the idea of the Environment Committee getting involved, especially in the spirit of renewed engagement with the lake committees, or the lake associations, I should say. There might be quite a bit of distance that we could go supporting the concept of it before we start strapping in some legislation. I think we'd also get a sense from that community engagement piece just how big a job it would be to enforce. So I very much like Councillor Berry's two-step process.
I suspect that a lot of the enforcement would take place during the summertime, and we have asked for additional forces to be in place in the summertime. But I can see that there, a two-step plan might be a good idea, and in addition, it might be an idea to do a bit of a survey using Bang the Table. Maybe the committee could develop a survey to see what people think and want, rather than starting right off the cuff with a bylaw. I haven't heard anything from Councillor Shortreed. Comments, please.
I agree, because there's so much that we don't know, especially from all the lake committees, or sorry, the lake associations, because you do hear a lot about even the lights on the cell towers and so on and so forth. So there is a concern, and I think hearing from them will be a huge impact on what we do going forward.
So you're in agreement with an education program and maybe development of a survey at this point
Correct.
in time?
Correct.
Councillor Richards.
Would we, if we had a dark sky policy, would it affect commercial properties? I know we've discussed not government properties, but would commercial properties be excluded? Because I would see that they would have a need.
Greater risk.
Yeah, like to provide safety concerns in certain areas like my own. Even though I'd like to, also like the highways, like because Hydro has those on like a, what's it called? Like timing, right? So we wouldn't have any control over those whatsoever, even with a bylaw, right?
No. Sean, I saw your hand up, and then Councillor Barry.
Yes, so to answer the question with respect to commercial implications, so that would be a direction of council and how the bylaw is drafted, because it could apply to commercial properties and there could be exemptions for security purposes and such. So that would be a discussion we would have with council during the development of that bylaw. And with respect to the hydro corridor, that the bylaw would not apply to that.
Councillor Barry.
Just in regards to municipalities, specifically us being exempt from the policy or bylaw, or just sort of how we go forward, is that open for discussion? Like, I think that I personally would like to lead by example. I'm sure there's some cases where, you know, we have to have lighting for emergency purposes, but I'm thinking like the orientation of how the light is projecting is different from not having a light on.
I'm not sure I'm clear on your question, but I see Angie's hand up.
Yeah, and Councillor Barry, I hear what you're saying. It by being exempt doesn't mean that we're not going to adhere to what we're asking the public to adhere to. Obviously, council gives us direction on those sorts of things, and we follow it, whether it be through policy, OP, or whatever it ends up to be. But what Sean is saying is that if we include ourselves in the bylaw, it would be rather awkward to enforce on ourselves if there was a complaint. So, you know, obviously, if council gives that direction, that's the direction we follow, but we wouldn't be included in the bylaw.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is for now, this will be turned over to the Environment Committee to do some work. I suspect you might have to work with Sean and possibly Melissa. I'm not sure, but go ahead, Angie.
I'm just wondering as well if I may request that if a survey is coming forward, that be developed and be given to Chad.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We would do that in consultation with and in cooperation with Chad. It was just sort of to give the committee an opportunity to discuss it, to sort of flesh out the things that they want in the survey, and then, you know, for Chad to go to work on it.
Okay, thank you.
So do we need a resolution on that directing the committee to look at dark skies? Or is it sufficient just to have council direction?
Just for clarity, is council proceeding with the recommended option 2, the education in consultation with the Environment Committee?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we can draft that in a motion.
Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillors Barry and Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 1923 submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated March 16th, 2023 regarding dark sky protection. And further, council directs staff to proceed with option 2 is detailed in the staff report in consultation with the Environment Committee. And further, council directs staff to prepare a survey for public comment on dark sky lighting through Bang the Table.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So the next item is the proposed Rogers Telecommunications Tower, and we'll give Deputy Mayor Dayu a moment to remove herself from the room. I'm looking to staff to let us know when we can proceed.
believe we can proceed now. Is Councillor Dayu or Deputy Mayor Dayu left?
We're just getting confirmation of that.
Oh, okay.
Will just be another moment.
Okay. From the looks of things, we need to get to work on the tower that's in Councillor Barry's area. Your reception is a little bit challenging. You can see there's a delay.
Yeah.
Can you text her and tell her to move? You're on mute, Angie. Looks like you're giving us the nod, though.
Sorry, yes, we're good to go now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Sean, if you would give us your report on the tower.
Yes, Rogers Communication is proposing a 60-meter tower located at a property along Highway 60 near Oxtongue Lake. Rogers did hold a public meeting for the proposed tower on February 7th this year over Zoom. Members of the public at the meeting were mostly in objection to the tower. There was one business owner who was in support of it. Following that, several letters of objection have been received for the proposed tower. Rogers has followed the public consultation process that has been identified in the township's telecommunication facility installation policy. It is recommended that council support the proposed tower based on Rogers following our policy on the development of towers. One thing to note also is that the proposal is in line with 3 of council's points of their strategic vision. And the agent for Rogers has also provided several points of view of the tower from various points in the Oxtongue Lake area, demonstrating its visual impact on the area. So based on all the information received, staff are recommending approval and are happy to answer any questions should council have any.
Sean, could you give us an idea of how many people attended the public meeting?
I believe it was around 20. I don't have the exact number, but it was around that number, I believe.
Okay. The reason I asked is that from the looks of the correspondence, a lot of the correspondence going back and forth is between 2 people, and Rogers and Eorn. I did want council to know that I had a rather lengthy meeting with the executive of the Oxtongue Lake Association and Sean to talk over concerns. I did follow up on several of the items that they raised. And in addition, I also attended a meeting that lasted quite some time between those same individuals and Eorn And there were concerns raised about the consultation process was deemed to be not quite as consultative as the folks were looking for, and more informative. So there has been some discussion between myself and Eorn, and they're going to talk to Rogers about that going forward. And just as a bit of an aside, I have been appointed to the Eorn board and will be continuing to stress the need for greater, stronger communication. The one thing that we do know or have discovered is that there won't be any lights required on the tower, according to Rogers. And that co-locations were investigated. There's some pretty specific criteria that Rogers have been given by Eorn in finding a suitable location. They've been tasked with finding a location that meets the absolute greatest number of residents and businesses in the area. And that sort of tightens up the search area. Now, I know that there have been some concerns raised, and I personally have some concerns about the fact that it does have an impact on one local business. But I'm not sure I'm not sure quite how to proceed with that. I mean, we can follow Sean's recommendation as he's given it to us. We can follow that recommendation and make comments about our disappointment in their consultation process, or we can not support the application, but that does not mean that the tower won't be in place anyway. So anyway, I'm looking for comments from other members of council. Councillor Richards.
Thanks for the conversation about this yesterday, Sean, and for sending me the policies that we do have in place. When I was reading through our policies, it says that towers should generally be located a minimum of 1 kilometer from the nearest residential use. But that doesn't appear to be where Rogers is placing this tower. Also, our policy says that it should be camouflaged or designed to blend in with and fit the context of the surrounding area. And there's nothing in the application from Rogers at all that discusses that. So I find their application to actually be incomplete until they do provide that.
I think they actually have, when you talk about camouflage, they're referring to monopine towers. And the problem with that is the fact that if they use monopine towers, they're so much lower, reducing their strength, and they would need to put more towers in than what's being proposed.
Yeah, I understand that the monopine, it doesn't apply, but I don't feel our policy is really. It's just saying monopine structures are preferred, but that's after asking that the design be camouflaged. And I think that if it was camouflaged to some extent, there may be less public angst about it being there. So I'd like to hear from Rogers what they can do to camouflage this thing.
It's interesting. I don't know of another method for them. I haven't ever heard of another method of camouflaging. It's a valid question. I would suggest, correct me if I'm wrong, that the neighboring property is not residential. Not to say that it doesn't have an even greater impact.
Well, I think there's 9 surrounding residentials within 500 meters radius. So that would be less than 1 kilometer from the tower.
I was thinking about the one particular property. Sean, and then Councillor Barry.
Yes, so the policy does encourage towers to be located outside of settlement areas and away from residential areas where possible. in this case, it's a tower that's being proposed in a relatively dense area in our standards, and that is to serve the greatest number of people possible through the EORN project. So there's several factors to weigh in reviewing these proposals. In an ideal world, yes, they would be invisible to all residential properties, and they'd be a non-issue. Unfortunately, that's just simply not possible in our rural landscape. With the towers, my understanding is they would have to put in larger towers, which could potentially have a greater visual impact on property owners in the area, the further they are away from these residential areas. So it's a fine balance to strike where they're high enough to provide service to the maximum number of people without having to put lights on top of them. The applicant has provided visualizations of the tower, of what it would look like superimposed on the property. From the lake itself, it's barely visible above the tree line. It is visible from the highway, but it is directly adjacent to the highway. So unfortunately, it's hard to have everyone happy at the end of a process like this. It is a fine balancing act.
While meeting the goals of our strategic vision at the same time. It's a really difficult one. I wonder, forgive me, I can't remember if Rogers initially appeared in front of us about this tower. I don't believe we've actually heard from Rogers.
Rogers has not attended the council meeting for this specific tower.
Councillor Barry, did I see your hand up?
Yeah. When I was at the Roma conference, some of this came up in discussion in regards to, how do we meet people's needs for service and infringing on the sort of vistas and community needs and conflicts. And one of the suggestions that came for, I think this was at the last discussion at the meeting, was that a municipality could identify areas within their municipality that they would instantly give pre-approval for. So that way that there has been some public consultation of we've identified these, 10 areas as key components, so that there is sort of some understanding that we're going to need towers, but we're going to need to have them in respectable places. In regards to this application, I personally, I read all of the opposition, and I did get the impression that it was less of a consultation and more of an explanation. And one of the concerns I have is in regards to some of our cultural significant places. I'm thinking where the Group of Seven did some paintings. Would those paintings have been done if there was a tower there stuck behind them? I do think that is something to consider. And the fact that it is in a sort of residential hamlet area or settlement area, I think I do wonder if there is a better location.
Sean, have you got any response to that? I'm not sure. They've looked at the locations that they must look at in order to meet their criteria. I'm not sure they're going to go back now and look at alternate locations, but we could ask Rogers to attend a meeting if that's something that council would like to have happen before we agree or disagree. Sean, and then Councillor Richards.
So I'm not an expert in telecommunication, and so I need to rely on the applicants when they come forward and the information they provide, that this is where they need to install a tower to better their network and better service the public with wireless communication. My role in this is really just to ensure that they have followed our policy and review it from a planning perspective and make sure it's not in an environmentally sensitive area. So weighing all those factors, that's how I come to my conclusion, which in this case is to support the tower. I have been in frequent discussions with the agent for the applicant, and should council wish, I'm sure they would be willing to attend a future council meeting to further discuss it.
Unfortunately, it looked to me like the part of the criteria for Rogers is that they don't consider, if the concern that's raised is strictly aesthetics, from a distance, that's not something that they consider, because if that was the case, they wouldn't be able to put any towers in Haliburton County. But what's council's? I'm sorry, I forgot that you had your hand up, Councillor Richards.
I would agree with Lisa Berry that I think our community wants cell towers put in. They want the cell coverage, and it's very important to our businesses to have it. But I think that we need to be more proactive in helping Rogers to find those locations, because I think that Rogers is limited to private landowners that are willing to come forward. And I'm not sure the general public is aware that they can come forward. So I think it would be good if we had an education session for our residents in the township as a whole, to be aware that they can come forward to offer up their property, so that more locations would then be available to Rogers to choose. And we wouldn't be tied into this situation where the tower proposed is really based on a private landowner coming forward and it happening to fit within Rogers' needed area. There may be another private landlord out there that will also fit, but nobody's aware of it. And if we don't have those conversations with our residents to be aware of the program that's available, then we can't proactively get these towers in the right places without a lot of public outcry about them.
That's a good suggestion. I think there is a process that we can put in place. I don't know about a public meeting, but definitely information to let people know. When we know that there's a tower coming, that there is an interest in leasing private property. There's also an ability to make municipal property available, should we have it available in the general area that they're looking for. But part of that review process could include advising the public that there's a tower coming, and if anyone's interested in leasing to Rogers or to whoever the applicant is, because there will be Bell applications coming through in the near future. It's a good idea. So how does council want to proceed? What I'm hearing is that we'd like Rogers to come and speak to us before we either approve or deny the request. I'm seeing nods. So could we have a resolution to that effect? I know that might take a moment's scribing.
Yes, I'll just need a few minutes to put something together.
Councillor Barry.
I can't help but be disappointed that they don't take aesthetics into their planning, just in regards to at what point is the financial gain for the company have no input from community belief in aesthetics?
You know what, I cannot respond to that other than to say that, in this county, there's over 600 lakes. And some of them are very big, and it would be almost impossible to serve some of them without you being able to see a tower, given their height. But you can ask them that question. Councillor
It seems like sorry.
So I am aware of a park in Mexico that the residents were very disturbed to see a tower go up in the middle of it, but it was really the best place to serve the community. And it's similar height, like 60 meters high, but they did camouflage it, and it ended up looking like a giant palm tree. So it's possible, and I don't think it's a significant cost to Rogers to do it. And I think that it's very important, especially for cottage country, to consider the aesthetics when placing these towers.
Well, it's a suggestion you can make to them, but it's not something that we can insist on. I don't believe that our process allows us to do that. Our policy is that they must follow a consultation process, and we can talk to them about that and how successful that was or was not in this case. But by all means, I mean, you can make any, that's interesting. But I mean, that's sort of similar to the monopine that they use. But if there is actually a way of further camouflaging it, it'd be interesting to find out about that. I'll make a point about finding out about that. Do you have a resolution for us? Could I have a mover and a seconder then for the resolution? Councillor Short Reed, seconder, going once, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receive report PL 2023 regarding the proposed Rogers Telecommunications Tower Site C8494 submitted by Sean O'Callaghan dated March 16th, 2023, and further Council defers its decisions and requests Rogers to attend a delegation with Council to provide further information on the installation of the tower.
All in favor? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, so we'll take a minute to welcome Deputy Mayor Dayu back into the room. You ready to go? Okay, next up on the agenda is external boards and external board meetings and updates, starting with the Dorset Partnership. Councillor Short Reed.
The partnership and the hub are both coming up. One's April 4th and one's April 12th, I do believe.
And they haven't met up until now?
No.
Okay, thank you. Upper Trent Water Management Partnership. Councillor Richards.
The first scheduled meeting is for the end of April. And the Muskoka watershed is for tomorrow.
Oh, right on. Under CPAC, there have been some moves to all of the municipalities have advised the police who their representation for the committee will be. The detachment commander is out of town for a couple of weeks, so we're hoping that we'll have a meeting by the end of the month, and I can bring you a little bit more information on that then. With respect to community safety and well-being, I think that it might be more appropriate for Deputy Mayor Dayu's name to be next to that as opposed to mine, as she's actually on that committee. I don't know if there is anything at this point to report or not. Deputy Mayor Dayu?
No, there has been a meeting, if I'm not mistaken, but as alternate, I was not invited to that one. So perhaps we could see if I could just join regularly to listen in and report back.
Yeah, that's interesting that you actually should have received an invite. And I think you should have the opportunity to attend as the alternate. It doesn't need to be one or the other. It can be both if that's what your desire is. So
Great.
if you could maybe communicate that to Mike,
Sure.
that'd be great. Okay, the next item is EORN. And just to confirm that I have been appointed to the EORN board, I am looking forward to being able to talk with EORN more about the consultation process and how that takes place on an ongoing basis, and on the continuation of this project. I'm particularly excited about the 7-in-7 housing project that they're about to embark on, and being able to participate in that process. They're just getting underway. The Eastern Ontario Regional Network will be attending, I believe, the next county council meeting to bring an update on the number of towers, the number of co-locations that they've managed to do, and what their timing is going forward. So I think there'll be a little bit more information to pass on to everybody after that meeting. And that's all I've got to report on that. Next on the list is the library board, and that's back to Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Yeah, we've had a couple good board meetings now. The programming is going gangbusters across the county. Lots of participation, lots of great ideas. It's a really vibrant community for the library, which is wonderful. Of interest, particularly for Algonquin Highlands, the idea has been placed and well received that this new board, which is a fresh library board, should take a look at the history of the Dorset Library, understand, what happened, why it was decided to recommend to Algonquin Highlands Council that we close down that section, with the view to reviewing whether the lockers service that we currently have in place is the right modality moving forward, or if there are other modalities that the board and that this council might consider, specifically given that we do have a crack of an opening now with the Dorset Recreation Centre opening back up in the coming months. It's good timing to review, perhaps not returning the library to its original state, but certainly to discuss with program staff and municipal staff what options might be there for an optimal library or book delivery service. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, thank you. Just one other point, both Deputy Mayor Dayu and myself have spoken to, Deputy Mayor Dayu would have spoken to the board as a whole. I spoke to Chris Stevenson, the CEO, about giving a little more attention to the Stanhope Library. We were out of service for so long, and the programming has been weak. There's been a lot of emphasis put on programming in other areas, and I know they try and spread the programming across all libraries, but that there be a little more emphasis and maybe a few additional hours assigned to Stanhope until it kind of gets back up to speed. I don't think that that's too much to ask. Anyway, we hope to see some activity there. Any questions about the library? So the next three items are yours, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Okay.
River Watershed Communications.
Yeah. So from MNRF, the spring drawdown of our lake system has begun in preparation for the spring freshet, which has not yet begun. And given the higher than average snowpack that we're seeing right now, on the whole, temperatures are within average range. Precipitation predictions for the coming couple of weeks are rather wild. Every agency has a very different sense of what's going to happen. So no one is predicting the onset of the freshet quite yet or the severity of the freshet. But the key message for all municipalities within the watershed is ice is going to begin to be quite precarious these days with the changing temperatures, but also with the onset of the drawdown of waters. I know that our township, our communication staff has been on that, getting that message out to our community. So that's good. And we anticipate in the next 2 weeks or so, there will begin to be predictions on freshet.
Excellent. I suspect that you don't have much to say with respect to the community climate change action plan.
Nothing that could better what Corey offered us earlier today.
Okay, thank you. So under general business, we have 2 pieces of correspondence. The first is correspondence from the Kawartha Conservation Protection Authority. Deputy Mayor Cease Royale from Highlands East has agreed to put his name forward representing Haliburton County. And I think that they are looking for a motion in support from us with respect to that. Are there any questions about that? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve Deputy Mayor Royale's appointment? Councillor Richards in short read.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved, the council of the Township of Algonquin Highlands endorse the municipality of Highlands East Deputy Mayor Royale as the Kawartha Haliburton Municipal Representative on the Trent Conservation Coalition Source Protection Committee.
All in favor? That's carried. The second piece of correspondence is from Jeremy Shoemaker, who is the manager of the Lions Camp with the Family Kidney Dialysis Camp. And you can see that they've given us information about the work that they do and the extraordinary effort that they put into assisting families in that regard. Now, they did ask that that letter be read out loud, given that the letter is there for the public to see on our agenda, and that we've all read it ourselves. I won't be doing that, but what I might ask is that information be posted on our website about the dialysis camp, just so that the public can see it in another form, if there's a way to do that. Is that a possibility?
I can check it, if I may. I can check with staff just to, and we need to check the policy as well to make sure that that is allowed, but certainly we can get that done if possible.
Okay. Councillor Barry?
Just in regards to that, if you said the website, but I was wondering if that would be an opportunity, and that would, again, I'd have to look to see the communication policy, but in regards to something with Chad, if there was information just reminding the community the good work that's happening there in regards to the dialysis.
Yeah, I just was kind of thinking under something like news and notices, and I'm not sure if it's exactly done that same way now, but we'll just look for her Angie to look into that and do whatever we can to make sure that the message is spread for them. So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive that correspondence? Deputy Mayor Dayu and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council receives correspondence for information from Jeremy Shoemaker, Camp Manager, Lions Camp Dorset, regarding the Family Kidney Dialysis Camp.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Is there any notice of motion? Seeing none, next is correspondence. Was there any support for items under the correspondence listing?
No.
Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives the March 16th, 2023 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. We have no closed session today. Next are the bylaws. And could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the bylaws as listed? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. 2023-14, part of original Shore Road allowance closing between lot 17, concession 12 and 13, geographic township of Sherburne, Lalonde, and Burdett. 2023-15, part of Shore Road allowance closing lie in front of part of lot 9, concession 11, geographic township of Stanhope, Prince. 2023-16, part of Shore Road allowance closing lying in front of lot 7, concession 3, geographic township of Stanhope, Cotton, Bierma. 2023-17, part of Shore Road allowance closing lying in front of lot 19 and 20, concession 10, geographic township of Stanhope, Raptis. 2023-18, to appoint a municipal enforcement officer for the Halliburton Highlands Water Trails. 2023-19, to adopt the estimates of expenditures and revenue for the year 2023. 2023-20, to authorize the levying of rates of taxations for 2023, to establish the due date for payment of taxes and to provide for penalty and interest to be added to unpaid taxes. 2023-21, to provide for the setting of salaries and wages for the year 2023. 2023-22, to establish the rates of remuneration for members of council for the year 2023. 2023-23, to authorize the execution of an agreement with Miller Paving Limited for the supply and application of surface treatment, and 2023-24, to authorize the execution of bin haulage and processing blue box recycling program service agreement with Waste Connections Canada, Inc.
All in favor? That's carried. And could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillors Richards and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-25, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its March 16th, 2023 regular meeting, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved the March 16th, 2023 regular meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:43 a.m.
All in favor? That's carried.